Welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, it's a huge and growing concern. It's called college affordability, but first, let's take a look at recent events in the Pennsylvania governor's election. Tom Wolf and Scott Wagner are going at it. We'll get to that after these words.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Well, I can't believe this. I have no clue how Russia and Paul Manafort got into the Pennsylvania governor's election this past week, but we have a couple of great reporters on the program. They're going to help us understand some developments in the Pennsylvania governor's election. Joining me, as often is the case, is Steve Esack. He's a reporter with the Allentown Morning Call, and Katie Meyer. She's the Capitol Bureau Chief with WITF. And I have to mention PA Public Radio, don't I?
Yes, you do.
I have to. I'll get into trouble with you.
PA Public Radio.
Yeah. All right, Kate, let's start with this. I mean, Scott Wagner makes what seemed to me to be an off-the-cuff comment about he was looking for Russia for help in his campaign, and maybe he would get a hold of Paul Manafort. Give us, for our viewers out there, what's going on here?
Sure. So this was just, again, as you said, an off-the-cuff comment. Wagner was at a campaign stop. I think this one was in Erie. And he was recorded by a campaign tracker. These are people that are working for the Democrats usually, who just, follow Wagner around. And this is normal for campaigns. They just kind of record everything he says. And in this case, he was making, jokes, really, to his supporters, I'm assuming. There was just audio. We couldn't see anything. But he said, maybe the Russians are going to help me out come November. Paul Manafort might help me out. So I and a lot of us reached out to his campaign for comments to be like, hey, he did say this. The Wolf campaign was making a big deal out of it. And the campaign said he was obviously joking, which it did seem like a joke. People laughed during the recording. Yeah. So that's that.
Yeah. It was just, trying to be a lighthearted on the campaign trail. But in this polarized tribal political environment, you can't
both
do
of
that.
Good point.
And it's just, it kind of backfired, especially during the week when Donald Trump's ex-lawyer, Michael Cohen,
and
pled
Paul
guilty.
Manafort.
And Paul Manafort, both of them have a little trouble, right?
Some legal problems.
A few problems. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, in comedy, it's timing, and Scott Wagner's timing was off on that joke.
So that was just a gimme for the Wolf campaign.
But the bigger point here is where do you think this campaign goes? I mean, are we down now? In the next segment, I do want to talk about an issue that has risen in significance, and that's education, and they had a battle over that. But on the day-to-day activities in the campaign, I mean, they're debating. They are actually going to have a debate. As we can talk about, Wagner says, can we have 67 of them? Like they're going to agree to 67 debates. That's not going to happen. Go ahead, Steve.
I was just going to say, but Scott Wagner has said we should do 3 debates, which is tradition in Pennsylvania. You do 1 debate in each major media market. Tom Wolf being the incumbent, and independent polls show comfortably ahead. He says, I'm only going to do 1. And again, the internet is there, live streaming is there, so that's understandable, but it's kind of, it's not tradition. It's not Pennsylvania tradition. At the same time, Scott Wagner, or Wolf's saying it's Pennsylvania tradition to release your income tax records. Scott Wagner says, I'm not going to do that. So
that was another thing he got flack for this week. He essentially said he didn't want to tell his workers how much they made, the implication being maybe they would try to unionize if they knew that. So that was something obviously in Democratic circles was taken badly. Anybody who's pro-union, I think, sort of probably gave them pause. I do want to mention one other thing Wagner sort of had to walk back this week, aside from the Russia thing. He was at a town hall and was asked, what he would do, like if he would uphold gay marriage legally. And what he said to that was, he didn't say anything to it. He was like, well, if the legislature gave me a bill that would do that, I would have to consider it. And which was, it sort of made it sound like he maybe doesn't want gay marriage to be upheld. And so it was a very unclear answer to the point where it's it's a little confusing. And so his campaign says, no, he was just caught off guard by the question, and he does support gay marriage and would uphold it.
My point in, go ahead, you comment on it.
I was just going to say, I think Scott Wagner tried to do a good job of explaining to that person who asked the question that this is not up to the governor. It's the legislative process. And he laid out the legislative process there. Where he kind of messed up was just, if it comes to my desk, and he left it hanging, I don't know. Instead of just saying, well, the courts have already ruled on this matter, basically.
I mean, and that was the crux of it. He left it open-ended. He didn't say where he stood on it, which made it seem like he didn't want to answer.
But isn't he generally known? He's a fiscal conservative, but I thought not on abortion, but on gay rights, he's typically been viewed more as a moderate. Am I wrong about that?
Typically, he's been pretty, I would say, with the times on social issues, you know what I mean? I think most people at this point, Republicans included, concede that gay marriage is a thing that's allowed.
Well, and the polls have shown support for it. I mean, is that even a debate?
No, it's
really
not.
Isn't.
And Scott Wagner's own votes and some of his legislation, and as a member of the Senate, shows he is moderate on social issues.
Okay, we're going to run to a break. When we come back, I want to ask the reporters, what has emerged as the central issue in terms of policy? We'll have to discuss whether there's a lot of policy being debated in the campaign, but there is an issue that has emerged as probably the single most important one, and we'll do that after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania State Education Association and Partners for Public Education, bringing the power of a great education to our schools, our students, and our communities. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Please visit pahighwayinfo.org. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Well, August used to be kind of sleepy time in American politics, but given what's going on in both the national picture and in the state of Pennsylvania, you can't say that is true anymore. Steve, let me start with you on this. Education during the Corbett years in particular, Governor Corbett was a huge issue because of the funding matter, and it sort of receded, given way to the economy and taxes. I'm not saying it's unimportant. It's still among the most important issues that candidates face when they run and office holders face when they serve. But education seems to have emerged as, do you think it's the most preeminent or predominant issue in the governor's race?
It is the most predominant issue in the governor's race, and the Republicans are pushing that as the issue. It started really when Governor Tom Wolf made a comment during an event in Philadelphia in which he said he wants all money run to basically follow the child. So if you get more student enrollment, you get more money. If you have less student enrollment, you get
the school districts would get more money.
Republicans latched onto that, and Scott Wagner's campaign latched onto that because all the many rural school districts in Pennsylvania have been losing kids, but they still keep the same amount of money even though they don't have those kids.
Yeah.
And they were saying Governor Wolf wants to get rid of all the rural money to school districts. So
it's sort of a rural versus urban. I've heard that a fair amount.
Very much so.
Yep.
And to the point that that has had a little bit of legs. It doesn't. Wolf had to walk that back. Last segment we talked about Scott Wagner having to walk a lot of stuff back. Tom Wolf had to walk that back, that comment back, and it's just a matter of the Republicans keep pushing that.
But both of you follow the debates in the budget very closely. I mean, education has done pretty well. The school districts have. We'll talk to Ken Mash a little bit about higher ed, but certainly the school districts have done better. $1 billion budget, $1 billion increase in the budget, current budget, 3% hike. take it.
Sure. So I think there's a couple of things that you have to know about these arguments the Republicans are making, just contextually, because it can be confusing. Wolf's comments, first off, about wanting to route all the school money through this new funding formula Steve was describing.
Right.
Currently, money does go through that new funding formula, but not all of it. And so, the implication in his comment was that he wanted all of it to go through that formula. He walked that back. He said only if there is more money, period.
Money for everybody.
We don't have to cut any funding. Yeah. And so, who knows, the Wagner campaign is trying to say that, he really does want to cut rural schools. But he hasn't moved to do that. And he says this will not happen unless we get more money so nobody gets cut.
A little bit of, and I want to switch subjects. I mean, I have to say something, get you to say something, I should say, out of this. Sexual abuse situation in 6 of the 8 dioceses. The legislature does look like it's going to take some action on limits, when you can file lawsuits and maybe some other things. I said all along I thought there'd be big pressure on the state legislature to do something in the wake of 1,000 victims, 300 clerics, priests, named as people who've abused kids. Go ahead.
Yeah, it is. The legislature may take it up en masse. Whether it passes, the big thing in that recommendation is allowing retroactive lawsuits for people that have aged out of the statute of limitations.
Right.
I don't expect that to pass. They may do a couple little minor things that are recommended on there. One of the recommendations may not even be needed. So it is going to be a lot of speeches, a lot of things going back and forth, but it's the legislature. Important matter. It ain't going to happen with a couple days left.
I would say,
final comment.
Yeah, we can expect the statute of limitations maybe to get extended or eliminated entirely if that becomes separate from the retroactivity provision. But there are lawmakers who have pushed really, really hard for this retroactive thing.
Yeah, and as I pointed out in last week's show, the majority leader in the House is leading the way, and I mean,
he's a lame duck.
That's true.
And I think we have to know
that's a good point.
The Speaker of the House.
We're talking about Dave Reed. He's from Indiana, PA. He's leaving. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, the Speaker of the House, Mike Turzai, sort of changed his mind on the retroactivity provision. He, in the most recent time the bill came up, said that he no longer supported retroactivity. Neither does the Senate leadership, all Republicans. So we have to wonder if that's going to get anywhere.
Is it going to go anywhere?
And who knows if maybe their minds have been changed by this report.
Yeah, we'll have to see. I mean, there probably is going to be considerable pressure on them to do anything, to do something, as you point out. Right. We're out of time, but I want to thank you both for coming in. All right, coming up, the promise of, in terms of higher ed college affordability, it's a big issue, tuitions and other costs for going to college. Plus, I want to ask our guest coming up about the funding for the public universities in the state.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Association of Pennsylvania State College and University Faculties, representing the faculty and coaches who are devoted to providing quality public higher education for Pennsylvania's college students.
Well, welcome back to the program. In education, I'll tell you, college affordability has emerged in the last few years as maybe the single most important issue, and I don't care whether you're talking about private colleges or public colleges. In this case, we're going to chat with Dr. Ken Mash. He's the president of the Association of Pennsylvania State College and University Faculties and a professor at East Stroudsburg University up there in the Poconos, right?
In the beautiful Poconos.
Yeah, I'll add to that. It's a great place. All right, Dr. Mash, let's talk a little bit, first of all. Before we get into college affordability, I do want to talk about the public universities. There's 14 of them. Obviously, we know the state-related, Pitt, Penn State, Temple, and Lincoln. 14 public-owned, wholly owned public universities spread all over the state. And the budgets in the past couple of cycles have not been all that great for public universities. Is that am I right or wrong about that?
Well, we're very happy because there was an increase, a $15 million increase that was given to the state system of higher ed. But if you look at the numbers historically, and since that big cut in 2011, we've never recouped for that. And, we're dealing with essentially the same amount of money in actual dollars that it was like 10 years ago. So we've never had the opportunity to catch up, and so we're constantly on a shoestring budget, and that has, the state system, Board of Governors have felt the pressure to increase tuition because of it.
And the more tuitions go up, the less affordable. I want to get into other aspects about that. And just so you all know out there in the audience, I was a professor at Millersville University for most of my academic career, so I have some interest in this. And the one thing, if I found out anything, and I'll ask Ken this in a minute, the one thing that I found out is that the public universities are a place where literally anyone, historically, regardless of income, it was a place where you didn't have to be wealthy. Your family didn't have to be, I'll put it this way, just loaded with dough in order to get to college and pick up on that
Well,
theme.
it's becoming increasingly less affordable for people, particularly working class folks, to go. At the same time that we see the increase in the tuition and fees at the universities, really financial aid has been flat for students across the whole entire state system. And you're right, there's a charge to the state system of higher education that was written into the law that they're supposed to be providing a high quality education at an affordable cost.
Right.
But increasingly it's become difficult, and it's become more and more unaffordable, and we're seeing the difference in the students who are coming and able to attend, that we are not bringing in those people, as many from the lower working class.
Yeah, and the other thing about the state system universities that strikes me as important is they're scattered throughout the state, and many of them are in geographic areas where, the incomes of the folks who live there, as they say in Lancaster County, ain't the highest. I joke about that, but you get the point.
Oh, absolutely. If you look at it, universities like Mansfield, Clarion, Edinburgh, California, those are in parts of the state that are truly struggling. And really, those are the exact places where there needs to be affordable higher education. But, our fear is that students are increasingly getting cut out. Now, having said that, students who do go, our universities, we are about success, and our students go there, and every single day at our universities, students are succeeding and going on to great careers.
Oh, sure.
And so overall, it's still a good deal for you to go to college when you look at the statistics as far as what you'll make in your life. But, it shouldn't be that difficult, and it shouldn't be that hard. We talk to students who work 3 jobs in order to be able to afford to go to college.
We're going to continue with this affordability. There's some numbers that I want to get into that are particularly important, and we'll do that after this break.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Medical Society. Inspired physicians committed to the good health of Pennsylvanians and the advancement of the practice of medicine. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care.
All right, I'm chatting with Dr. Ken Mash. We're talking about college affordability. It's just generically, we're going to get to a couple of numbers. I mean, it has emerged, it seems to me, when we talk about higher education, not just in Pennsylvania, but around the country, as the single most important issue confronting colleges and universities. Am I wrong about that?
Oh, no, it absolutely is. Affordability is a big problem. It impacts enrollments. I think it's had a major impact on the enrollments at the universities as the state system. It's not just about, that it's more expensive. It's about what you believe the role of education is in a society. Yeah. And if we believe in upward mobility, if we believe in, the American dream, you have to be able to provide opportunities to people and not have them be closed out.
Yeah, and look, I think you would admit, you spent your life in higher ed as I have. It's not for everybody. We're not saying that everybody should go to college, but given the complex society that we live in, with all of the particularly in the technological side of things, and employers are begging for workers with certain skills, correct?
Right. And, I cringe a little bit when I hear that argument, not everybody should go to college.
You can disagree with me.
No, I agree with you. I don't know any one of my colleagues who believes everybody should go to college. You should go, if you're ready to go, if you're ready to do the work that is expected of you. But generally, if you make the grade, that is, you can get in, you meet the admissions requirements at a university, you should have the opportunity to go if that's what you want to pursue in your life.
Good point.
And then that's the thing that we don't want to cut out from people, and we don't want to be steering people in another direction when it's not their ambition.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. Median student debt for students in the state system has increased 132% between 2000 and 2015, and you say 68% in inflation-adjusted terms.
It's just out of control.
It's mind-boggling.
It is out of control, and it's not like in our state system that we're living extravagantly, right? There's been cuts in people, there's been cuts in programs, but costs continue to go up. So, something really needs to be done. We need to be refocused. We are supportive of the Pennsylvania Promise, which tries to make college more affordable, at least for families with incomes below $110,000. But we believe that not only impacts those students, it impacts all the students, because if enrollment goes up at a university, like at Millersville, if enrollment goes up, that means you have more students who are paying the costs for the basic things that need to be spent on the buildings, the heating and the rest, and that means that it lowers the cost for everybody.
Before I let you go, talk PA Promise. What's that about?
Yeah, so essentially the legislature, and actually now there's bills out there in the Senate and in the House, and the idea is that if your family makes less than $110,000, that you would have the tuition that's set by the state system of higher education, that you would get that, and it would be paid for, as well as the fees at the universities. If you're at a state-related university, Penn State, Pitt, Temple, Lincoln, you would get an equivalent of that amount. And if you went to community college, you would essentially go for free. And I know that for some people that are like, free, that's bad, but there's still a lot of costs associated with going.
All right, thanks for the update. You come back soon and we'll talk about, changes that take place, and hopefully for the better.
Yeah.
All right, we'll see you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, stay well.